Marcia, turn on the GPS. No, I know how to get there. I want to know when it says I'm going to get there. Because from that moment on, it's game on. How many of y'all do that with your GPS? Like, it tells you what time you're going to arrive, but no way you're going to beat the time that it says you're going to arrive, right? Like, so like a few weeks ago, we were driving. We knew we had a 4.5-hour trip over to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Marcia punches my Waze app, and it tells us, hey, it's 4.5-hour trip. You're going to arrive at 5 o'clock. No, we're not. Not when I'm driving, because we're going to get there at 4:45. I'm so about 4:45 on this trip. And so from that moment on, I try to do everything in my power to make sure we beat that 5 o'clock time. And I love watching it, that it just ticks down. Like, I just saved a minute. I just saved 3.5 minutes. Dang, we had to stop for gas, But I'm going to make it by 4:45. And so, hey, bathroom, you got to go to the bathroom, not unless you're peeing on the back seat. Right? I love the fact that I can actually look at that and see what time it tells me, but I'm going to do everything I can to shave time off of that. Stop and eat, you'll be fine. You're part camel. Deal with it. And I do speed limit. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that one later. But everything I can do, because I'm going to shave 15 minutes off a 4.5-hour trip. And for me, that's a win. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know why it's a win. It's 15 minutes. But the reason I think it's a win is because we value time. In fact, raise your hand if you've ever thought or said, I wish I had more time. Or raise your hand if you've ever said something like, there's just not enough time, or I've wasted so much time. I wish I could do this in better time. I hope we got a church on time. Put your hands down. That's just ridiculous. We value time. Friends, it's the bottom line of our lives. We value time. We value it so much that we talk about time like we talk about money. We say we save time for. We bank time in case. We invest time in. We spend time on. But let me tell you something. I've never been by someone's deathbed and they said, I wish I had made more money. I've been by a lot of people when they said, I wish I had more time. Friends, welcome to week number 1 of our brand new Christmas message series called The Wish List. We're talking about things in these next number of weeks that we wish we had. Like we started polling people. Like, what do you wish you had? Wish you had more of? Wish you had in your life? Not things you can buy, not things you wrap up and put under a tree, but the real things of life. Things that really matter most to you. And one of the main things that came back to us was time. Time. How do we redeem the time? How do we value the time? How do we navigate time? How do I have more time? Well, nobody has more time. We all have the same amount of time. So how do we use time in the best way for your life? And so we're going to be talking about time this morning. There are times in your life that are good, better than others, right? When everything's going great, all the pieces fit together, things are falling into place, people in that time of your life are amazing. But then there are times in your life when it's not going great. And the pieces don't fit together. Things are broken apart, and the people in your life are not amazing. They're just awful at that time in your life. Time can be hard at times, and nothing seems to be going right in those times. You wish you had more time or could navigate the time better, or you wish you could get through this time. And for some of you here this morning, that may be accentuated by the season that we're in. Maybe it's magnified during the holiday season, because sometimes for some people this is just a hard time. Like your days get crowded, your to-do list gets longer and longer, and the reality is your calendar is screaming for mercy. Now, some of you I know are just prepared for this time. Like, how many of you finish Christmas shopping in August? Yeah, right. Some of you did that like for next year already. But the reality is, for every one of us, there will be times in your life that are just harder than other times when it's hard. Life and time puts pressure on you. I want you to understand that God understands the pressures and the deadlines and the expectations of your life. That even though we value time, and time is this great precious gift that we get to have, that sometimes in your life are harder than other times of your life. God understands the fray of your life in which you live. So this morning, we're going to recount a time that I hope is going to be really, really valuable to you, a time in Jesus' life where he's going to show us that even in the midst of the very hardest times, he can make sense out of that and help you navigate that. What I'm going to do is tell you a story. It's Mark 4, beginning in verse 35. If you want to follow along, you can just jump on your phone app and follow along. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to tell it to you. Mark wrote one of the earliest accounts of Jesus' life. This is fast-paced retelling of things Jesus did more than things Jesus said. But there's one thing Mark recorded for us that Jesus said that I think is so super valuable for when we talk about the time and hard times of our lives. So let me just begin into this story. It's pretty early in Jesus' ministry. He's gone through 30 years of just, quietly going through life as a man, but now all of a sudden at this moment, at this time, he's going to begin to show people that he's also God. And when Jesus kind of came on the scene in ministry, he was doing things like no other person had ever done, that no other person could ever do. He was teaching like they'd never heard anyone teach before. Man, he's healing people of leprosy, of blindness, of deafness, of being lame. He's doing all these miracles. And as he kept doing these things, more and more people heard about it. More and more people kept coming to him. More people came to see him. More people came to hear him. More people came to experience him. And with all that drawing a crowd as his fame grew, more and more people came to expect from him. So as crowds came, they didn't just come by themselves, but hey, Jesus, I brought my mom, my uncle, my sister, my brother, her neighbor, and their dog. And they're all sick. Can you please do something for all of them? And Jesus like, yeah, I can heal them all. And so more and more people came, and with more and more people came more expectation placed on Jesus. And one day, after what had been a particularly hard and trying and long day of teaching and healing, Jesus said to his followers, hey guys, let's get in a boat. Let's go to the other side of the lake. Let's just kind of get out of here. And when we talk about the other side of the lake, don't picture like the lake at the golf course you try to hit your ball over, right? Picture not even Moraine State Park, but this is the Sea of Galilee. So he's talking about putting some distance between him and the shoreline. And so they're there on the western side of the Sea of Galilee, and they want to go over to the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. So they get into the boat and begin to sail. And let me just tell you how Mark begins this part. This is chapter 4, Mark 4, verse 36. He writes, leaving the crowd behind, they took him along. Like leaving the crowd behind, they took Jesus along. Does that strike you as odd in any way? I never saw something in here until this past week. I've just always kind of read that. But listen to those words again. They took him along. In every other event you can read about Jesus, just about every other one, it's always Jesus taking others along. It's Jesus leading others to. Jesus leading others away from. It's always him helping them get somewhere, but not in this event. Friends, don't miss this. This is a valuable, beautiful, holy moment of just saying, yeah, Jesus is fully God, but he's also fully man. And I can picture them, okay, Jesus, come on. We're going to take you along. Just watch your step getting in the boat. You're just worn out. Jesus, come on, just take a break. And it shows us this earthly, manly part of Jesus. So leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. This has been a day that when time was hard, when time was pressure, when every minute was filled up with people and their demands and expectations. And when you look at Jesus in the event, he's just dog-tired. He is worn slap out. And whether it's because he wants to get away from the crowd or to get to something on the other side of the lake, he says, put some distance. We got to get away, just let's go across the lake. And they start sailing across the lake, and then out of nowhere, this huge storm just fires up on the lake. And the guys in the boat with Jesus, they're scared to death. Now, this lake was known for that. This is the Sea of Galilee, and on the one shoreline of the Sea of Galilee are these really, really big mountains with deep-cut valleys. And these valleys were like a funnel. The wind would just come through those and come exploding out of those onto the lake, and huge squalls, huge storms would arise. But who were the guys in the boat with Jesus? Some of them were fishermen. This was home court for them. This is their lake. This is the sea they fish on. That may have been their boat. These guys knew how to navigate the waters. These guys knew how to live in a boat. They knew how to handle this. But when you look at them, these guys in this storm are absolutely scared to death. Now, I'll never forget being scared to death in a boat. When I lived in South Georgia, I lived on St. Simon's Island, and it afforded me the opportunity to be in a lot of different boats a lot of different times. But there's one time I was more scared than any other time I've been in a boat. Two of my closest friends, Emery and Dan, the three of us had gone out flounder gigging all night. We'd gone out to Cumberland Island, which is another jump off the shore. And we'd gone out to Cumberland Island to flounder gig all night long. We caught about 1 or 2 hours of sleep on the boat. And then we were coming back across the sound between Cumberland Island and Jekyll Island. And we started across the sound. About halfway across, the wind started whipping up. And the waves started crashing against the side of this boat. It wasn't a big boat. And I'm going to be honest, I was scared. I'd never been in a boat with waves this big kind of coming up against that boat. But I was okay because I was with Emery, who owned the boat, and he was pretty good on the water. And I was with Dan, who was a wildlife biologist who was always out in the water doing something. So I was really good. And so I looked at them. And they were scared to death. I thought, dang, this is not good. And we began navigating, trying to we could see Jekyll Island where we're going next, but the wind and the waves were rocking us. And they chose, I don't know why, but they chose at that moment to tell me that, yeah, Rich, we don't want to capsize here. You know why? No, but lay it on me. Because this is the deepest hole, the deepest section of the whole coastline. And it's the third largest breeding ground in the world for hammerhead sharks. Thank you, good friends. When they told me that, I may or may not have screamed like a little girl. No one else can tell me because no one else was there. I will never forget being scared in that boat. And the guys in the boat with Jesus will never forget being scared in that boat. But there was something else about to happen more powerful in that event that would begin to take over their fear. This is what happened. They're scared to death. They're holding on to the boat. It's rocking like crazy. They run back to the back of the boat where Jesus was asleep. And they shake Jesus. They say, Jesus, wake up. Don't you care that we're about to drown? Don't you care that we're going to die? Like, Master, you might be able to walk on water, but it's not so good for us. And they wake Jesus up, and Jesus stands up in the boat, and he looks around. And the wind is whipping his hair, and the boat is rocking. Like, the other guys are holding on for dear life. I just pictured Jesus, balancing himself. I don't know if you've ever been in a rocking boat, but it's not easy to stand. And he looks out at the waves, he looks out at the wind, and he says these words. He says, peace, be still. And immediately the wind laid down and the waves died down and everything went completely calm. And all the guys in the boat were like, whoa, who is this man? Who is this man that even the wind and the waves obey him? They were amazed at this. In that frenzied moment, in that time when they thought they had no more time, Jesus spoke and Jesus won. But the coolest thing about this to me is that God doesn't just say that, peace be still, to the things around you. God doesn't just look at the time you're in and the challenges of that time that you're in and say to the things around you, peace be still. God looks right at you. He says the same words to you. How do I know? It's a promise he made. It's an experience God's people had. Jump back to the Old Testament with me. Back in the Old Testament, when people experienced God, when they saw how great God was, and they saw glimpses of his majesty and his glory and his splendor, when God's hand would rescue them, when they were fearful of things, they would write it down in song and psalm. Then they would sing those or recite those as worship, as praise. Their lives would sing it out, say, God, this is who you are. You are powerful and glorious. For instance, how many of you have ever heard the 23rd Psalm? And if you've ever heard that read, oftentimes you hear it read at a funeral, right? And it's read as a funeral dirge, like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Well, what's the good news of that? Like, do you know that was written not as a funeral dirge? That was written as this amazing psalm and song of victory that the people of God would use to lead them into worship. They're going in to take ground for God in worship experiences, and they're reciting that and singing that going in. Go home and read the 23rd Psalm like that. Hey, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green. It is victorious, and it would change the way you hear it at every funeral from now on, I guarantee it. But they would capture these great moments of God in their words, and they would write it down. And there was a time when God's people were under attack, when they were feeling overwhelmed, when there was a time of fear. And one of the psalmists wrote these words. He wrote these, Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Do you see the victory here? Verse 10, he says, and God says, be still and know that I am God. He's not talking to the sea. He's not talking to the mountains. He's talking to the people. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Friends, there was a time when God's people had it tough, when they wished it was a better time, a different time, and so they clung to this, that God is our refuge and God is our strength. And 1,000 years later, God would prove that to be true in a very powerful and personal way to a bunch of guys who were scared and pressured and frenzied men on a boat in a storm on a lake. God's promise is still proving true today. He is still proving himself in our lives today. In fact, let me show you real quick 3 truths that we can take right out of those 2 passages we just heard. 3 things, and these are fill-ins on your sheet. If you got your sheet, pull it out and fill these in. These are 3 places where those stories intersect your story. And the number one is super simple. Number 1, you will be in hard times. You will be in hard times, like God's people at war, like the guys in the boat, when you're under pressure, frenzied, wishing that you had more time, wishing it was a better time, like you going through finals, or you going through deadlines at work, or like you facing the brokenness of relationships when it's not so great to be in that relationship. With some of you even going through trying to make it through the holidays, some of you are like wondering where the wonder of the season went. If it's not right now, please understand you will go through hard times. But here's a great truth. Number 2, even when you do, God is with you. God is with you. Just like they sang about him being ever present. Just like Jesus stood before them in that boat with the wind and the waves crashing all around them. Because this is Emmanuel. Emmanuel, the name that was given to Jesus from God to the angel, saying, you will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom me. Save me, because I'm in a storm. I'm in a hard time. I'm in a fretful time. I need Emmanuel. I need God with me. In times full of wonder, even times full of stress, God is with you. God is with you. Not only is God with you, but listen, here's truth number 3. God says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Listen, God lives outside of time. God is not bound by time. God doesn't have to count the minutes and the hours and the days and the weeks and the months. God lives yesterday, today, tomorrow. He's not like us, bound by time, but God broke into time. You realize that? God put himself under the influence of time for a time, not as something or someone bigger, bolder, better than us. He came in the most humble way. He was a baby, born to an unwed teenage mom and dad. It doesn't get more humble than that. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but listen, for the first time, God felt the effects of time. For the first time, God aged. For the first time, God got tired. For the first time, God had to take a nap. For the first time, God felt the pressures of time. He subjected himself to time. But for the first time, people had hope in real time, all because God showed up in their time and said, peace, be still, and know that I am God. Jesus chose to live in time so that you can navigate time. You can learn how to live in time, even the worst of times. to give you a hope in time and to let you live beyond time. So what if? So what if? What if tomorrow you could wake up and trust that God really is in your time? That he really is here, that he really is in every moment of every hour of every day of every month of every season of your life. Wouldn't that make a difference for you? And what if you could awaken right now and trust that whatever you're going through right now, the time you are in right now, that God can redeem it, that God can own it, that you can navigate it and actually survive it? Time. I believe it is on every one of our wish lists in some way. Not that we could ever have more of it, because everybody gets the same amount, right? I've heard people, you've probably heard people too, say, I wish I had as much time as she has. Nonsense. Y'all have 24/7, right? We all do. Some people are just better and smarter at using it than others of us, right? But we all have the same amount of time. So I think the real cry is, how do I use the time best? And how do I navigate the time I'm in? How do I survive the times that are so hard? And God says, well, here I am. I'm Emmanuel. I am God with you in every time of your life. Time, it's on every one of our wish lists. It's this really amazing, amazing gift. But it doesn't come, wrapped in paper and set under your tree. The answer to your questions about time came to us wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in a manger stuffed with hay. Jesus is the answer to everything we're going to talk about on your wish list. Today, he's the answer for time. I want to light this Advent candle this morning, the first one of the season, as a reminder that even in the midst of your hardest times, Jesus stands with you. With all the pressures and all of the crashing waves and all the frenzy and the fray, he says, peace, be still, and know that I'm God.